ChatGerry, Experimental Pathophysiology Learned from a Living Body, number 1553, February 28, 2026, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation, category, Personal Medical Journey. A different kind of laboratory. In my early years at MIT, Professor Norman Jones taught me to see the physical world in a way that later became the foundation of my survival. He showed me that every structure lives under load, changes with time, stores energy, and gradually moves toward its limit. He trained me to separate reversible behavior from permanent damage and to search for mechanism instead of description. At that time, these ideas belonged to engineering. Decades later, when chronic metabolic disease entered my life, they became the language through which I understood my own body. I did not enter a medical school. I entered a long survival experiment. There was no laboratory, no research team, and no funding. The only system one could study was a living physiological system that had already been damaged and that I had to keep alive. In this environment, disease became the examiner, data became the textbook, and longevity became the only outcome measure that mattered. What first appeared to be a solitary path slowly revealed its continuity with my past training. A long glucose curve became a load history. Vascular risk became structural safety under repeated stress, the separation between reversible metabolic dysfunction and irreversible organ damage followed the same elastic and plastic principles that I had learned in structural mechanics. My mentor was no longer physically beside me at MIT, but his way of thinking had become the methodology of my medical research. Learning science from survival, I did not learn pathophysiology from authority. I learned it from functional loss, partial recovery, and continuous measurement of my own body over past 3.6 decades. Every finding and conclusion had to pass a simple and strict test. When I changed a lifestyle input, a measurable biomedical output had to change in a predictable direction. Food, walking, sleep, breathing, blood pressure control, and glucose control became the inputs. Organ performance, risk levels, medical events, and recovery trajectories became the outputs. Because the controller and the biological system are the same person, the cause and effect relationship is directly visible. This creates a true closed-loop system in which measurement is immediately followed by adjustment and adjustment is followed by a new measurement along the same time axis. Lived experience is no longer a personal impression, it becomes quantitative science. Recovery without regeneration. One of the most hopeful discoveries for patients is that recovery does not always require regrowth of lost cells. Over decades of observation, I saw the same pattern across my various organs. The brain does not replace dead neurons, yet it forms new neural pathways that bypass the damaged regions. The heart does not regenerate dead muscle, yet it improves its efficiency through collateral circulation and reverse remodeling. The kidney does not create new nephrons, yet it stabilizes by redistributing the workload to the surviving nephrons. In each case, the structure is not fully rebuilt, but the system regains a higher level of function. Recovery is therefore not the reconstruction of tissue. It is the reorganization and reoptimization of a living system under reduced load. Time reveals what snapshots cannot. Traditional medicine is largely built on cross-sectional observations. A laboratory value, a clinic visit, or an imaging study provides a necessary and life-saving snapshot. But a snapshot cannot show a process that evolves with time. When one biological system is observed continuously over many years, a different dimension appears. The accumulation of damage can be followed step by step. The moment when compensation begins becomes visible. The approach toward a tipping point can be recognized before the event occurs. After the load is reduced, the speed and extent of functional recovery can be measured along the same time axis. It feels like watching a movie in a cinema. Disease is no longer a static label, it becomes a trajectory. This does not oppose traditional medicine. Population-based research provides the map of common pathways. Longitudinal lived pathophysiology shows how a single system moves across that map. One gives breadth and shared language, the other gives depth and real-time control. Together they form a complete understanding. From passive care to active control, in most clinical settings, treatment is followed by a waiting period before the next evaluation. This open-loop structure is practical for population care but leaves the internal dynamics of the system unobserved. In a closed-loop model, measurement is followed by immediate adjustment and new measurement. Each action produces a measurable response, and each response guides the next action. Health management becomes active system control rather than passive treatment. This methodology is not limited to a single individual, once a stable input-output relationship has been defined. The same analytical framework can be applied across patients because the underlying pathophysiology is shared. Differences among individuals are primarily in magnitude, rate, and timing rather than in fundamental biological mechanism. Much of modern medicine has advanced by translating findings from animal models to humans. Despite far greater biological differences than those between individual patients, on that basis, a rigorously measured, long-term longitudinal dataset from one human subject should not be dismissed a priori. Its value lies in its ability to reveal dynamic physiological transfer functions that can later be tested, calibrated, and validated in larger populations. The key issue is therefore not the sample size alone, but whether the mechanism identified is real, measurable, and reproducible. My goal is not to participate in methodological debates. My goal is to make the hidden process of chronic disease visible to patients so they can act before irreversible damage occurs. Long-term, time-dependent data allow individuals to see how daily lifestyle inputs change their biological outputs. This transforms healthcare from passive treatment after the event into active control before the event. That knowledge belongs directly in the hands of patients. The universal rule of load and energy, across all organs and all stages of my medical history, one governing principle remained unchanged: when chronic load is reduced, the rate of damage declines, and the remaining structure can operate within a safe range. Under these conditions, compensatory mechanisms become effective and functional stability returns. Human biology does not violate the laws of physics. A living system under long-term stress follows the same load-energy structure principles that govern engineered systems. My body has the evidence. Between 1994 and 2004, I survived 5 heart attacks. In 2010, I faced severe neuropathy near amputation, kidney failure that required dialysis, and retinopathy that nearly took away my sight. These were the long-term consequences of obesity-induced diabetes and the structural damage it created in my vascular system. Much of that damage is irreversible. Yet during the past 17 years, none of those catastrophic events has returned, organ function has partially recovered, and risk has been brought under control. In mid-2025, I suffered a hemorrhagic stroke caused by long-term cerebral vascular calcification. Today my strategy is real-time prevention by monitoring acute hypertension through a trigger index TSI. I am building an early warning system for a second stroke. This is not luck. It is the result of continuous measurement, scientific reasoning, and disciplined lifestyle control carried out inside a living body that had already been severely damaged. The real outcome measure: I do not seek praise or recognition, I seek time. If I can live to the age of 85 or even 90, that number will not be just a number. It will be the final validation that the years I spent self-learning medicine, applying it to my own body, and transforming survival into practical science were worthwhile. Final message: traditional medicine provides the population map. Longitudinal lived physiology provides the personal control system. One offers collective knowledge, the other offers real-time survival guidance. Together they create a more complete understanding of chronic disorders and certain mortality diseases, and the path toward a longer and more functional life. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.